Hello everybody and welcome to Millionaire Mindset, where you come to learn and get inspired. Jeff Bezos may be viewed today as the richest person ever in history. But believe it or not, many historical figures or the past were richer than him. Some even reached their total possessions equivalent to trillion in today's currency. So in this video, we will list down the top 10 richest people ever in history. Number 10. William the Conqueror, $230 billion. Having people call you Conqueror means that you are pretty much a very influential man and have so many assets. He was born around 1028 and was the first Norman king of England. His total fortune was estimated at around double of Bezos' net worth today. He got this fortune by conquering England and Wales and pillaging its people. Not a very noble way to get rich. But when he became a king, he banned slavery and had over 500 castles built for him. And he was very showy with his riches, as he was known to eat a lot and wear fine clothes. Number 9. Osman Ali Khan, $236 billion. He is one of the more contemporary ones on our list. He is an influential figure of the 20th century, having been featured in 1937's Time magazine as the world's richest person. Ali Khan is the last ruler of Hyderabad, a state in India. It is estimated that his wealth reached $236 billion, and by some, even $750 billion like the Guinness Book of World Records. He is known to have owned the Jacob diamond, which was the 5th biggest polished diamond in the world. Well, he did not use it as a jewelry, but as a paperweight in his office. Could you believe that? He also owned a collection of jewelry that got passed down from ruler to ruler. These jewelry included emeralds and pearls. He also owned 50 Rolls-Royce cars at his palace. But unlike other rich people, he was known to not be very showy with his wealth. He wore the same for nearly his life. He often ate on a tin plate, and he even knitted his own socks. And he also gave some of his wealth to improve his state. He introduced electricity, airplanes, and railways, and regularly donated to educational and religious institutions throughout India. Number 8. Nikolay Romanov, $300 billion. The Romanovs are perhaps the most well-known wealthy family in Russia. Despite his riches, Nikolay was known among historians as a weak an incompetent leader, and even Nikolay himself said he didn't want to be a czar and he didn't know a thing or two about being a ruler. But that didn't stop him from living a life as an extravagant ruler. He had an annual salary of 200,000 rubles plus 20,000 for spending on clothes and other items. In comparison, an average factory worker only earned 500 rubles a year, and high-ranking officials 5,000 rubles. You would think that Nikolay's salary is enough for his lifestyle, but he is known to overspend and was often spending 150,000 more. So how did he spend all of this? Well, this guy just liked to wear fancy clothes and uniforms and expensive jewelry. He and his wife would often go to shopping sprees. He was a party guy too. His coronation was the most expensive coronation in Russia's history, with 24 tons of gold and silver tableware, and a 1,200-person choir was hired. He was also a lavish foodie with a kitchen manned by 55 people just cooking him a 5-star restaurant quality of courses. And he was known to also bring a lot of staff on his hunting trips, including painters, to paint the scenery they were in. Now that's an extravagant way of life. Number 7. Andrew Carnegie, $309 billion. This one's familiar to most of us, as he is one of the more famous names attached with wealth and richness. He had a rags to riches story, as he went from working in a factory changing spools of thread and a telegraph messenger. Then through hard work and attention to detail, he went on to become the superintendent of the Western Division of Pennsylvania Railroad at the young age of 24. With this experience, he greatly learned about business and investing. A matter of right place at a right time, he invested a lot of money into the railroad industry as it began to explode after the Civil War. Then after this, he founded 2 companies in the steel industry, Keystone Bridge Works and Union Iron Works. Then finally, Carnegie Steel Company, where he was most known from. He sold this company to another wealthy man from history, JP Morgan, for $13 billion. But like Osman Ali Khan, he donated most of his wealth to charities. He left only a small portion of his wealth to his family and servants upon his death. He wrote the book The Gospel of Wealth, where he said that a man who dies rich dies disgrace. Number 6. Yakka figure, $400 billion. You know you're rich when people call you Yakka the Rich. He lived circa the 1400s. His parents owned a sizable business in trading textiles while he focused on mining operations, specifically silver, quicksilver, copper, and cinnabar. He was smart in his investments by spreading them across different industries and got very lucky with them. He even loaned money to the Vatican and helped in funding several buildings on it, including the Sistine Chapel. Well, after all of this, he still had some extra money for himself. He was also known for having an extreme lifestyle, often buying his wife expensive gifts from time to time. His house was 4 stories tall and had water fountains and fireplaces in each room. But he also had some philanthropic endeavors, as he was one who founded Fugarai, the first low-income housing program in the world and still operational to this day. This contains 52 houses for families with the most difficult of situations. The rent is very low, but they're required to pray for the Fugger family. I wonder if that rule is still in effect today. Number 5. John D. Rockefeller, $400 billion. Another familiar name on this list. He is considered the wealthiest American in history. He dominated the oil industry in the late 19th to early 20th century with his Standard Oil Company, where he controlled 90% of the market. His riches reached enormous heights that he covered 2% of the national economy. He also had a somewhat lavish lifestyle. He owned houses across the country, but most notable was his 40-room house in New York City that took 6 years to build and had a collection of Chinese ceramics and 28th century works of art. But that's not the most incredible thing about this house, because it is set on a 3,510-acre estate that included 75 other houses and several golf courses, swimming pools, billiard halls, tennis courts, a bowling alley, and Rockefeller's own farm. At first, Rockefeller was not well liked by the public. I mean, no surprise. There he was super rich and pretty much had an oil monopoly. But as he got older, he became more philanthropic by donating 10% of his yearly income to charity. Number 4. Akbar the First, $500 billion. The figures might not be accurate on this one. Some experts estimated his wealth reached even more than that. Akbar is a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, so he owned a massive empire. He even tripled the lands he conquered by the time of his death. It stretched from India all the way to northern Afghanistan. He was also a forward thinker. He practiced religious tolerance by letting his people choose their own religion. Again, a little can be said about his wealth and how he spent them, but it is known that at the peak of his empire, they controlled a fourth of the global GDP, not just Asia, but the whole world. His wealth was also evident through his massive collections of carvings, paintings, and furniture scattered around his place. Number 3. Augustus Caesar, $4.3 trillion. Among the top 3, Augustus is the only one confirmed to be a trillionaire by historians and experts. As some of you might know, he is Julius Caesar's heir, and most of his wealth came from Julius. It is said that he inherited 75% of his wealth upon his death, and Julius was a rich emperor too. A portion of his riches also came from prominent families of the Roman Empire. And speaking of, he nearly doubled the size of the Roman Empire during his 40-year reign. He founded a standing army, police and fire services and courier systems that were way ahead of their time. His house, now known as the House of Augustus, featured art and weapons rooms. Mosaics covered the floor and frescoes covered the walls. He greatly improved the condition of his empire compared to when he started. One of his famous quotes stated, I found Rome of clay, I leave it to you of marble. For our number 2, we go to ancient China, specifically the Song dynasty circa 10,065 to 1085. Again, a matter of right place, right time. Shizong reigned during the height of prosperous golden age of China. They were the top makers of bronze in the world, and the production of rice dramatically increased and became an economic staple. Several technologies were also invented during this time, like gunpowder, printing, and magnetic compass. They were also said to have invented the first money made of paper and established the first navy, which they used to protect their trade routes. With all this combined, his dynasty controlled 30% of the world's GDP. His total wealth cannot be easily computed, but experts had comfortably estimated it to have also been around trillions of dollars. Despite his increased collection of tax that might have benefited his total riches, Shenzong greatly improved the employment situation of his citizens by developing modern welfare systems. And number 1, Mansa Musa, unknown. You might have heard of him, maybe you don't, but he had a fortune so enormous that historians couldn't even quantify it. There were accounts of him traveling across Africa and zebras carrying thousands of pounds of gold, and it was like pocket change compared to his total fortune. Again, same with Shizong, he got incredibly lucky. He became the ruler of Mali Empire during the early 14th century after his predecessor went missing trying to reach the end of the Atlantic. He also benefited from Europe being devastated by several significant events like civil wars, the Great Famine, and the Black Death. In this period, Mali was the world's largest producer of gold and salt, which were the two most sought-after products. Mansa Musa was not much of a conqueror compared to others on this list. He only conquered 24 cities with their surrounding districts. He chose to remain distant to the Middle East and Egypt at first, but he's a Muslim, so he had to have a pilgrimage to Mecca, and this voyage was extravagant too. He traveled almost 4,000 miles, and he was accompanied by thousands of his soldiers and servants. Each wore Persian silk and carried gold. Even the camels brought 50 to 900 pounds of gold. Each city he went to was a spectacle. People were hospitable to him, and he gave gold in return. Upon approaching Cairo, the Sultan at that time offered Mansa Musa to visit and stay at the palace. At first, he was reluctant because it was customary for visitors to kiss the Sultan's feet, but he finally obliged. After he left, the roads of Cairo were covered in gold, and the people became instant millionaires due to his gifts. But the downside was the value of gold depreciated because of this, and it took them 12 years to financially recover. When he returned home, he immediately built mosques and universities at his empire. He even built a library that housed over 1 million manuscripts, rivaling that of the Library of Alexandria. But good things must come to an end. When Mansa Musa died, the whole empire weakened, and several civil wars happened. Soon after, European cities conquered the empire and exploited all of its remaining resources. So that's our top 10 richest people in history. Were you expecting Jeff Bezos to be in the top 10? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to give a thumbs up to the video and subscribe to the channel.